Variation. Sociolinguistic variation is a study of the way language varies and changes in communities of speakers and concentrates in particular on the interaction of social factors such as a speaker's gender, ethnicity, age, degree of integration into their community, and linguistic structures such as sounds, grammatical forms, intonation features, words. Variation in language as a sociolinguistic phenomenon may depend on different factors. Language variation factors contributing to variation are geography, socioeconomics, gender, and age. On the one hand, language can vary according to the situation in which the speech act takes place and according to the relation between the speaker. Language varieties may also be associated with specific functions in particular situations. On the other hand, language varieties may be characterized by the geographical and social background of the speaker. A variety associated with the geographical location in which it is used is called regional variety or regional dialect, whereas variation in language due to social factors is referred to as social variation or social dialect. In the late 18th century, dialectologists treated variation in language as a result of the geographical origin of the speaker. In the 1950s, sociolinguists started to concentrate on social factors relevant to language variation. They agreed that the dialectologist's point of view was too restricted and that geographical location was not enough to account for linguistic variation. Firstly, they pointed out that a language is subject to constant change. The mobility of the speakers of different dialects of one specific language and the resulting interaction between these dialects caused modification or substitution of linguistic features. Secondly, they started to investigate differences in society which proved to be relevant to variation in language. The sociolinguist's interest in the field of social variation. Every single language has a repertoire of varieties, including a standard variety which is a result of deliberate intervention by the society. A language undergoes standardization in order to create a standard language which serves as an orientation for linguistic norms. A variety differing from the standard variety in pronunciation only is often called accent, whereas variation in grammar and vocabulary may be referred to as dialect. It is shared by a speech community which is defined by the use of certain linguistic features and by a common attitude towards the variety. The choices among the variants of a linguistic variable are influenced by both social and linguistic forces according to Fassel. Linguistic variables. A variable can be seen as a set of alternative features called variants, which can be substituted for one another without changing the meaning of the word. A linguistic variable is a linguistic item that has alternate realizations as one speaker realizes it one way and another a different way, according to Labov, 1997. Phonological. A linguistic variable can have a number of variants which differ from one another on a phonological level. For example, the variable ing has the two identifiable variants, ing and in. The present progressive form of verbs where the ing suffix is realized differently by different speakers. Some linguists might argue that the difference between the two realizations of the ing variable is a morphological difference. A clear-cut distinction between the variants is not possible, and the identification of the relative differing variants is much more complicated. This is also the case when a variable shows multidimensional variation. That is, when more than one characteristics of the pronunciation of a vowel has to be taken into consideration. Morphological. Variation can also be relevant to studies for linguistic variation. For example, at the third person singular s in the present tense form of verbs, the variable thinks may be realized as either thinks or think. The non-occurrence of the suffix s would be regarded as a non-standard realization of the variable. Lastly, lexical items. Our lexical variation is rather relevant in investigating different registers. Investigating the social distribution of certain synonyms, however, is very rare as significant data is more difficult to elicit.
Interactional sociolinguistics is an approach to discourse analysis that studies how people use language in face-to-face interaction. Specifically, it focuses on how people manage social identities and social activities as they interact. It derives from a variety of disciplines including ethnomethodology, conversation analysis, linguistics, pragmatics, linguistic anthropology, sociology, ethnography, and dialectology. It is often claimed that interactional sociolinguistics draws on the work of Irving Goffman, 1892, and John Gompers, 1892. Goffman showed, amongst other things, how people tried to avoid embarrassment and save face when interacting with others. Interactional sociolinguistics has a theoretical approach to language use and accompanying methodological perspective. Put another way, interactional sociolinguistics holds that because of the incompleteness of talk, all language users rely on other knowledge that is not communicated. This is known as extracommunicative knowledge. Talk, in other words, in context. The listener effectively hypothesizes about how the context is conveyed and all what the speaker possibly meant by words spoken. Consequently, words can be said to have indexal meaning. And this is meaning that interactive conversationalists need to utilize when interpreting talk. Interactional sociolinguistics thus tries to describe how people in a conversation identify extracommunicative elements. It then analyzes conversation to see if it is contextualization has worked in the production and reception of talk, and whether that influenced subsequent interaction. Cues thus tend to be words with other vocal features such as volume, accent, intonation, code switches, sequencing choices, style shifts, formulaic expressions, or non-vocal such as gesture, gaze, posture, or mimicry. So, Gompers, who coined the phrase, stated contextualization cues are the means by which speakers, signals, and listeners interpret what the activity is, how semantic content is to be understood, and how each sentence relates to what precedes or follows. Cues usually involve multiple features that clarify what might otherwise be ambiguous content of utterances. Okay, for example, in the course of a conversation, a speaker might say, "Unbelievable." In one context, it might mean that the speaker does not believe in something. In other contexts, such as a closing of eyes, a shake of head, and a raising the hands of the fingertips touch the forehead, might translate "unbelievable" into "how astonishingly stupid was that?" So cues and inferential patterns are acquired through prolonged and intensive face-to-face interaction in particular cultural settings, and contextualization conventions vary across culture and subculture. So, for example, in Western Europe, a sentence that ends with a rising intonation usually indicates that the speaker is unsure, while a falling intonation indicates a degree of certainty. However, interactional sociolinguistics goes beyond conversation analysis in exploring inferential processes and social and cultural worlds that provide the context for the talk. A key element here is taking into account inequality when examining context.